huge shift in the size of government.
Let's break down some of the tax increases from more of a conservative point of view as reported by the by the LA Times this week. Brian Riedl, the coverage, the article points out, a budget analyst at the Heritage Foundation, says Obama's plan amounts to an unfair redistribution of the tax burden. He said that the top 20% of taxpayers now pay 80% of all taxes collected by the government, and 40% of households pay no income tax. Under President Obama's plan, he said the top 20% of tax filers would pay 90% of all taxes, and the number of families who owe no tax would climb to near 50%. The question, Dee, is in this kind of economic crisis, the Obama administration says there's no tax increases to 2011. Nevertheless, is this what you do in the middle of a recession?
Well, as you just stated, the tax increases don't kick in until 2011, theoretically, at which time the Obama administration's projections are that we'll be back on a path toward pretty robust growth. There's some question as to whether those projections are actually going to hold up, whether we will actually be growing at a 3 or 4% rate.
I don't know that anybody's saying there would be robust growth.
Well, 3 or 4% is pretty robust. That's what's in that document. And so that raises some interesting questions. But Obama is working very hard to keep his promise, which is not to raise taxes on the 95% of middle and working class and lower class taxpayers. Can he pull this off without going back on that at some point and sharing the sacrifice?
Let's pay for it with massive debt. That's the design.
Let's put some of this in perspective. In 1980, the top 1% of earners in the country controlled about 8% of the total economic pie in the country. 26 years later, the top 1% now controls almost a quarter of the nation's total economic pie. Back in 1993, when Bill Clinton passed his first budget, there were cries that if indeed it went through, the tax increases on the top earners in the country would cause a massive redirection of wealth from investment in the country, would cause people to lose jobs, it would cause the government to run debt. As a matter of fact, the exact opposite happened. I'd remind people that no Republican, not one in the House, voted in favor of that budget. What happened? The largest peacetime expansion we've ever had.
You're just making Mike Murphy's point, though, here. Back in the 1990s,
I'm actually making a different point.
No, you're not. In the 1990s, there was a leveling wind. It was called a Republican Congress in 1995. And I say this time and time again about this current crisis. This is what concerns me. You had Bill Clinton, who loathed those of us that were in the Congress. Congress loathed Bill Clinton. But you know what? At the end of the 1990s, it worked. We balanced each other out. We had the best of Clinton economics, the best of Republican economics. Hold on. The economy exploded, and our economy was only 18% of GDP. That was conservative leadership from Republicans and Democrats. There's no balance now.
The same complaints that come today came then, that we would find ourselves in a position a few years down the road where government would be too large, that somehow or another people would not invest in the country. The reality is this budget, whether you like it or not, is a totally different construct. This budget believes that government has a constructive, positive, and even practical role in trying to not only correct markets, but redirect them. No,
Harold,
but you can't have it. You can't have it every which way. You can't have it every which way. You can't have it every which way.
That's the difference. This is so big. I mean, we're quasi-nationalizing the auto companies. We're taking the federal debt in the next 10 years greater than the total federal debt of the history of the country, and we're paying for it by taxing the people who pay 62% of the taxes now, that 5%, which still is not nearly enough. That's what's dishonest about this. If we're going to build a French Republic of a public sector that big, let's be honest with American people and let everybody get in the boat.
The president said he's not going to take us down the same path we've gone the last 8 years. In November, voters said we want a different path. If it doesn't work, he's indicated, I own this budget, I own this economy.